Welcome to Intro to Object-Oriented JavaScript. By the end of this lesson, I hope you will be able to encapsulate state and behavior with classes in JavaScript. So we'll end up incidentally kind of hitting on this a little bit also in the course of this, but hopefully you'll see at a minimum why this is so much more of a rat's nest than it was and than self was in Ruby. All right, so this is kind of the opposite side of our paradigms chat. We talked twice last week, videos are online if you missed, about functional programming. Quick recap, who can rattle off some of the functional principles that we talked about? What was it? Purity, love it. What else? Immutability, very good. What else? You remember my favorite vocab word. Referential transparency. Okay, what else? Yeah, well, no, not encapsulation. First class functions and higher order functions. What is a first class function? Mm-hmm. And what about higher order functions? Or? Hey, you got it this time. Cool. You pull anybody off the street who sucks and ask them about what's functional programming, their answer will probably look something like this. Object-oriented program is about as far away from FP as we get. So if this was far more mathematical, this is far more literate. These object-oriented programs start reading a little bit more like stories, which is part of their design. They say, all right, OOP, encapsulation. Anybody know what I mean by encapsulation? I'll give you a hint. It's right there in the objective. What are we encapsulating? All together now. State and behavior. Very nice. So if that's the thing that we are encapsulating, remember in FP, we're doing all these data transformations, pushing off the side effects. We're doing disciplined state management. So we're trying to not have state opposite in OOP. We're trying to keep the state and the thing that modifies the state right next to each other. And so you don't operate on the state directly, you operate on it via these behaviors. There's inheritance. You guys did a little teensy bit of inheritance in Rails and Ruby. Remember how inheritance worked? Mm-hmm. Yes, which is why they can have index actions and they all sort of get that like before action helper. And in active model, when we did an active model class, you'd have something like class dog inherits from active model. What did this do? What did inheriting from that get us? Yep, all of its state and behavior. So we can start with something general and then make it more specific. So I pick some traits that are common to all mammals. From that, I can say, all right, but some things are very particular to humans, and others are even more specific to children. Inheritance. So I might have breastfeed or something as a method on mammal, and like is fed as a state. Humans have those, and children have those also. But not every mammal walks, right? Whales don't walk. And so maybe that behavior and an is walking state, that's specific to humans. And then there's like a lose baby teeth function or something that's particular to children. That's the idea, that we're starting super general and we're getting really specific. Now, there are some dangers to this. We'll talk about those in a sec, but that's the idea of inheritance. Okay, this next one is actually shared with functional programming. It's your super complicated word for the day. Starts with a P. Anybody know what it is? There we go. Polymorphism. So big idea on polymorphism is we can have two things that have the same name and different behavior. So the way that any human could crawl, maybe the way that children crawl is different because the architecture of their legs is not quite the same. So we define a crawl method here, and then we override it here. That is a kind of polymorphism. Anybody happen to know what the last one is? I'm assuming some of you have it up. Abstraction. So we're looking for shared attributes and behaviors, and then we're abstracting them out into something. These four things are the four pillars of OOP. All right, now let's talk about this in JavaScript a little bit. So our goal is to encapsulate state behavior with classes in JavaScript, and I could tell you all the ways to do that, but why? When somebody has written it so eloquently, and you read faster than you listen. So I am going to send you to the MDN reference for classes. The page looks like this. I'm going to start with about 7 minutes on the clock, and let's take a little bit of time to read this. 7 minutes and go. Oh, damn it. I feel like we were talking about this the other day. Class declarations are not hoisted. Thank you. Let's take one more minute. All right, before we talk, just like last time, I want to take 2 minutes, brain dump everything you got right there on classes. Even if you took notes already, I don't care. Write it all out again. 3 minutes, brain dump. Welcome, Ben. We just read the classes article on MBA. Everything you remember about classes. Thirty seconds. All right, Nate. I want to whip around on this and see if we can just compile a list of ideas. These don't need to be fully fleshed out. We're just trying to digest a little bit. Joe, can you give me one idea that you remember from classes? Indeed. I'll also say, I've never seen somebody use a class expression. Like, I just learned that you could do that. Pretty much everybody uses the declared format, especially since I also learned that the declarations don't hoist. We were wondering about that last week. They do not. And so since they don't, there's really no advantage to not using them. I think they look better than the other syntax. But, YOLO. Fun stuff. Declarations versus expressions, very nice. Mohammed, what's something you take away? Say that last part again. Yes. Local to creates a scope. Cool. Katie, what's something you took away? Indeed. This is 100% analogous to what in Ruby? Initialize. Constructor is the more common term. That's what it will be called in C++ or C# or Java, but serves the exact same purpose. It's the thing that happens when you call new. Okay, very nice. Colin, what you got?
Static methods, the ones that call on the class itself.
Mm-hmm. Cool. What were those in Ruby? Class methods. How do we do those? Self dot as like the name. So static, just like constructor, that's what you'll see in most OOP languages. It's the exact same concept though. Okay, very nice. That's Stephanie back there. Let's cut back around. Alex, what's something that you remembered? Super keyword. What's super do? Absolutely. So if you go back to that little hierarchy that we had earlier. If humans have a cry method and children have a slightly different cry method, but I want to be able to have access to this original one also, I can call this.cry or whatever, as well as super.cry and get that one. Probably most common use case for this is in the constructor. If these three things each have slightly different constructors, then I'll probably want to call this, if I'm making a new child, I might want to call humans constructor and then do a couple of other things in particular. Or do a couple of other things that are specific to children and then call humans constructor. And humans constructor probably at some point calls mammals constructor. So you can use just super by itself to access that. Cool. Let's see. Krabby Patty, what you got? Always something to complain about. Okay, that's fine. What you got, Nelly? Okay, cool. Tell me your Java thing. Excellent. Indeed. Indeed. Anybody pick up on the keyword that we use to do that in JavaScript? Extends. Very nice. It was the caret in Ruby. It's the extends word in JavaScript. Wonderful. Cat. Yes. Nine times out of 10, your instance properties are going to be declined in which method in particular? Constructor. Okay, very nice. Then you're going to be doing it. You can create one out of nowhere. I usually wouldn't recommend that. And then if I wanted to do class properties, a static property, anybody pick up on how that gets done? A little bit trickier. There's a syntax for that. What most people will do for that is after you've defined the class, you can also, it's an object, so you can set properties on it. And so you do class dog, whatever the fuck, and then you do dog dot is furry equals true, and you have a static. property. Okay, very nice. See, Cody, get a little bit thin here, but you got anything? Yeah! I saw a lot of you taking notes on that. That's an interesting one. What did you pick up about strict mode, Cody? Mm-hmm. Indeed. So we get a performance boost by working in strict mode because there's fewer things that we can do, and so the compiler has to check for fewer things, ergo it runs more efficiently. And all the things that you have to do in strict mode are probably things that you're doing anyway, that you should be in. For example, who among us has not been bit in JavaScript by doing something like name equals Kyle instead of const name equals Kyle, or var, or let. If you don't put a scope on this, what happens? Puts it in the global scope, okay? Wouldn't it be nicer if it just threw an error? There's no good reason to do this. Even if you want to throw something on the global scope, do window.name and it is the exact same thing. So like, this is an accident 100% of the time. If you're in strict mode, it throws an error when you do that, rather than just silently putting it in the global scope. There's a few things like that that are delightful. And so, what is how does strict mode relate to classes? Whether or not you declare strict mode. Sick. So, awesome. Starting to get down to it. Aaron, you got anything?
I'm not too sure how they work exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yes, don't worry about it. That one's like pretty in the weeds, but good catch. What you got, Arena? Ooh. So we could have set proto, and there's a variety of methods there because, and this is the thing I do want you to know about this, is that all this class nonsense is what we call syntax sugar. If you look up OOJS, like tutorials and stuff from 2 or 3 years ago, not that long ago, what you'll see is a bunch of functions and like dot prototype and tons of stuff like that. That's how we did object-oriented stuff in JavaScript for many years. This class keyword thing, it's not any new functionality. And in fact, right under the hood, it's still just doing functions and dot prototype and all that kind of stuff. This is way more helpful from people who are coming from OOP backgrounds than like, hey, all those things that you do in C++ and Java and C# and PHP and Ruby, here's no more features and a completely confusing syntax. So we put it in a nice dress and called it a brand new boy. That's syntax sugar. Cool. So yeah, that set prototype of all those kinds of things are just allowing you to use that sugar, the actual prototype stuff. It's right underneath that. Excellent. Yeah.
So if you weren't to, if you did not,
Uh-huh.
if you didn't use the constructor method,
Mm-hmm.
would it just default to whatever the prototype, property were?
So yes, just whatever is just automatically set, usually because of some constructor in a superclass. Yeah, you don't have to make a constructor if you're not doing anything. If you don't need to initialize anything, then don't use one.
But if you write a constructor, it's
Correct. All right, this is actually a pretty good set of things to start with. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's a great question, and I think this will illustrate how thin the layer on top of all this stuff really is. All right, nothing up this sleeve, nothing up this sleeve. If I make an app.js, don't follow along with this, by the way. If I make, oops, too much Ruby. All right, so I make class animal, and it's got a constructor that sets this dot name equal to name, and it takes in name. Cool. So something like that. Or we do function car. And we do this dot name equals name. And then I do cheetah equals new animal. And I do Buick equals new car, Buick, and I console log cheetah.name and Buick.name. Let's see what happens when we run this. Cheetah, Buick. These are the same thing. Now, it's even lighter than that, because this capital letter, that actually makes a difference in Ruby. When we start something with a capital letter, it's expecting it to be a constant or a class. JavaScript's JavaScript is case sensitive, but the casing doesn't do anything. I can make this lowercase c car. Run that again, get the same thing. It's just a convention. Like classes start with capital letters. And hopefully you've picked up on this. Classes in JavaScript are just functions. We just do weird shit with them. And we use the this keyword, and they don't have to return anything. And we use this new keyword with it, and all these other kinds of things. Outside of that, not any different. Yeah. So, TLDR, yes. And to be fair, it does like tend to read a lot better, because as soon as we start doing other kinds of OO things, like I want to roar, for example, maybe I roar cheetah.roar. Dave, grr, I'm cheetah. So the way that you do that with the function syntax is actually like a little trickier. So the most common way is you do something like car.prototype.roar equals something like that. Does the same thing, but you have to do that. Otherwise, if you did something instead like, should I do car.prototype? No, sorry. Animal.prototype. No, I did want to do car. The car is roaring too. What do you know? If instead I did something like this.roar, which you can totally do. The problem is that every single time you make a new car, it redefines this function. Not good. We want it to exist once in the chain. Imagine I got 1 million cars, 1 billion cars. That's that many different identical definitions of this exact same thing. So we throw it on the prototype so that it only exists once. Or you just write it like this. Easy. Probably because somebody won some argument about how evil hoisting is. And it's like, you can fix your errors by making this one thing not hoistable. If you really want to hoist them, you can just write them this way. Just hoist. So get's kind of an interesting one. Let's say I did something like, no, I do get species and I want to return my species is, so this is a function, right? So normally we'd have to do something like that. With the get keyword, you don't have to invoke it anymore. You can just use it like it was a property, except it was actually a function. It's dynamically calculated. More like cool syntax stuff. Yeah, oops. Something I didn't like. Cannot find module. What module? I saw it just worked a second ago. All right, well, my species is cheetah. That's how that would work. Cannot find module. Oh, it's doing that. Cool. What else? Oh, maybe that's why. Node app. There you go. My species is cheetah, even though I didn't invoke it and it's a function. And I could calculate that. I can use the this keyword. I can use other functions. I can do a lot of shit that I couldn't do if it was just a static assignment. What else? Yeah.
So, I have this question, this one. If you are defining models in relationship in the backend,
Mm-hmm.
what is an example of where you use object oriented? Do you use this
Mm-hmm.
front end?
You can do modeling on the front end also. So let's go back to that, back to the develop member app. I do modeling there too. So I showed some of you at least last time, what these look like on the server, where I'll have like this, which is essentially a poor man's active record. I construct it with some things. I can list stuff, I can find stuff, I can query, and now anything that inherits from model can do all of those things. So for example, a talk. The constructor calls models constructor to tell it what the name of the model is and defines these as the public properties and then exports it. That's it. But it gets list and find and all that kind of shit for free, just like active record. So that's on the back end. On the front end, I actually do that too. So like same kind of thing. I'll have a base class for the model, except this does things like figure out how to fetch something or figure out how to fetch all of something. and it dynamically generates the URL. Because I'm using a conventional backend, you don't need to write these fetch calls out bespoke every single time if they follow some patterns. And one of the cool things about OOP is even if I do have one that breaks the pattern, I just have to override that one method and I still get all the other ones. So, all right, all the models have these things. And if I go over to this, that build URL function, it takes in a model name and an ID and just generates what the URL would be from that. So on the data store, this would be here. Oh, it's in modules. There we go. I can do something like if I want to get all of the events, I just run event.fetch all, and I get it back. Don't have to like actually, this module does not give a shit what the URL is. So that would be an example of doing that same kind of class-based data modeling on the front end. It's a really powerful tool, and I don't think enough people do it. So those are, the relationships aren't, in this case, aren't enforced on the front end, but Ember Data, for example, will let you use data exactly like you do in Active Record, where you can go events for each event.speaker, or map through those, all those kinds of things. This is a little bit dumber than that, but the idea is kind of the same. And then this is a view app, and so it takes those things and it just stores them in the Vuex store. Here's what I want to do. I want to take a look at the assessment for batteries. There we go. Take a look at the assessment for this on the site. We want a Pokemon class that stores a Pokemon's name, image URL, and the list of abilities. So, actually, let's start right there. Go back to this. All right, and I do want you to follow along with this part. So I'll give you a sec to get set up. All we need for right now is empty JavaScript file. All right, and then give me a thumbs up when you got an empty file ready to rock. Keep them up. You good, Joe? Cool. Danica, do you have an empty file to work with? Cool. All right, so the goal is create a Pokemon class that stores a Pokemon's name, image URL, and list of abilities. See if you can initialize that much. Go, and then we'll do it together. All right, I'm gonna call on somebody to start me on this. Say Lizzie. How would I start to create this class? Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Then what? Okay. Then what? Beautiful. That's it. If yours did not look like that, take a sec to get it in line. Holy shit, it looks just like it did in Ruby. Ah. We can improve this works. You don't need to follow along with this part. But we could make Pikachu as a new Pokemon. And if I look at Pikachu's name or Pikachu's abilities, shows up. That easy. Okay, onward. Next thing, we need to add a method to this called createCard that generates a DOM node that kind of looks like this. Give that a shot on your own as well. Go. So I saw two distinctly different approaches to doing this. All of them started the same way, which is good. Create card. Also, pro tip, it looks like an object, but you don't do commas between these because they're not actually objects. It's a different syntax. So it started this way, which is good. And most people did something like creating a div with document.createElement. Okay, that's all well and good. What happened from there, two different directions? Can somebody tell me what one of them was? Joe, how are you approaching this? Outside of the class, just as like a function or something like that. So you can do it that way. And then how did you approach making these elements? So you made the div and then, sure, so then like we make an image and make a p tag, something like that. Totally valid way to do it. It's actually semantically more correct to do it this way. There's also a cheater shortcut way, which is probably what I would do. Lizzie, I saw you doing that. How did you approach this?
After we did it here, do it that way,
Oops. That's probably what I would do. The other way I think is technically better, but who's got time to make all those elements? Not this guy. Got places to be. So you do something like, you do something like this, and now we just need to swap out these things for whatever. We still have like a little bit of work to do though. All right, if I'm starting here, who can tell me what I can get one step closer to this method working? Yep, so what do I do with name? Mm-hmm. Ooh, will that work? This dot name. Because just like Ruby, we're trying to access the instance here. So whatever instance I'm on, I want Pikachu's name. We can do that same thing here with this .image URL. We can do this .name for the alt text. This one gets a little bit trickier though. I'm just writing a string. I can't do anything dynamic. Like add those abilities. Oof. How am I going to solve that? It's an array. Okay. For each on what? On the array. Okay. So abilities dot for each. Then what? Each one is just a string, let's say. Okay, so what do I do with each of those? Create an li and append it. Okay, so if I do const li equals document dot create element li, and then yep, exactly, text content equals ability. Neat. Now how am I going to append it? How do I get that UL so that I can append it? I bet a lot of you don't realize we can do this. How would I do that? Document? Div. Dot query selector. Like I said, I'll bet a lot of you didn't realize you could do that. Document is an element. That's why we can do query selector on it. What you can extrapolate from that is we can also do that with any other element. So if you want to search specifically within some narrow area, you can look that up and then run query selector on that element. Okay, so now that I have that UL, what do I do? Beautiful. Awesome. And then last thing I need to do, this won't do anything right now. Well, we start by just returning the card. You want to keep these small enough that they're not doing more than one thing. Making a card is one thing. Making a card and adding it to the page, two things. Okay, well, I have this create card method now. Dope. I want to fetch a list of Pokemon using the Poke API. Shoot, I could probably make a static method for this. I did something like fetch all, and I want it to return fetch is it v2 Poke API. Very nice. Shoot, I'll start with 1. And maybe it takes in a name and oops. And we look them up by name. Okay, so I can do Pokemon.fetch Pikachu, and I get back whatever the result of that is. And then create a new instance and generate a card for them. So that might look something like const Pikachu equals Pokemon, or new Pokemon. Oops, sorry, I take that back. One thing that's kind of wild about this is what? This fetch we need to account for. I'm actually trying to fetch and make these things. Asynchronous. So I'll do that. I'll parse the response. And then I'll take the Pikachu that I get back. And I need to make new Pokemon with it. So I could say something like new Pokemon Pikachu.name Pikachu.sprites.frontDefault. God, I know way too much about this API. And we need to like process its abilities, but whatever. We'll just give them Pikachu.abilities for right now. Something like that. And then I can do Pokemon.createCard. And maybe I do body document dot query selector body dot append Pokemon. We do something kind of like this. We're in the ballpark. I did mention that this comes back as an array of objects. We needed to make it an array of strings. What JavaScript tool do I have that helps me do that? Nope. Good guess. Array of objects to array of strings. It's the same number. Map. So I can map over those. And what do I want back? Abilities. Ability dot name. So it's going to be ability dot ability. That's my favorite. Dot name. And now I should get an array of those strings. Okay, now there's one thing that we still need to do before this works. So I can't, if I try to node run this, any guesses what's going to happen? It's going to throw an error, but what's the error going to be? I heard it. Document is undefined. Why is document undefined? Comes from an HTML file, which Node doesn't have. Node doesn't have a concept of a document or a window or anything like that. That was part of what we lost when we ripped it out, and we got things like process instead. So we need to make a HTML file and run it in there. We do HTML head body. And down here in the body, I put the script tag for that file. Why am I putting it in the body? Uh-oh, we should know this. What is that weird behavior we'd get if we put it in the head? What was that, Arena? That's true, but we don't see the contents of the script file either. Patrick? Yep, it reads this stuff top to bottom. And so if I put this here, there is no body. We're parsing this from here. Okay, cool, title, I'll add it. Script, I'll run it top to bottom. And it goes, cool, take your body. Body? We don't have one yet. So there's ways to handle that and keep it in the head, but by and large, we put it at the bottom of the body.
You just look at body for like doing head and stuff like that. So I know they head automatically for some
So, like, it semantically is supposed to go in the head because you don't see it. The way that they do that is with an event listener for the document being finished loaded. Exactly. It's an event that occurs on the document. All right, so if I do that, and I do that, and run it, let's take a look at that class again. We call it a static method that sort of abstracted out that fetch call. We took the response, we made a new instance of Pokemon, we created a card with it, and then appended it to the page. Object-oriented gerbil script. Fucking crazy, I'll tell you what. Correct.
Like, it creates the object, but then names it and gives it all after we create it, after it's created.
So keep in mind, this static method call doesn't have shit to do with instances. It's just a utility. We could have made that a separate function, but since it relates so closely to this class, that's what you tend to use static methods for. Little utilities around something that are, think about how JavaScript does this with the math object. Have you ever done math.random or any of those kinds of things? Math.abs. All these little built-in math things, math.max, those aren't properties of numbers. You can't do number.sign, but you can do math.sign and give it a number, utilities. What else? Yeah. Okay, did you write it like this? There you go. There's something else going on, but if you go over to the network tab, yeah, you did all that. That'll work. Other questions? I would like a brave soul to walk me through how this file works, top to bottom. Explain the lines one at a time. Arlene, come on up. Oh, it's too bad. If you make a mistake, you get kicked out of school.
Damn it, well, I'm not sure.
All right, tell me how this works.
Really we're starting by defining the class of Pokemon.
Mhm.
We got the constructor method, which is when we know there's one constructor method within one, within the error. Our constructor has a name, an image URL, and abilities. And then we grab it by using the this that grabs like for each instance. So this name grabs the name, and then we're going through each one.
Right.
And then for the static fetch name, we're actually reaching out to the Poke API, and we're grabbing the name of the one that we're looking at.
What's a static method?
That I wasn't sure.
Okay, you can help Arlene out. What's a static method?
Apparently I'm not alone on that. Okay.
It's a method that only the class can access, so you only be able to access it, for example, through like Pokemon.fetch, you can just like call it any other way.
You can't do Pikachu.fetch, but you can do Pokemon.fetch. So what is this exactly like from Ruby?
So, that's our class method.
Yep. So we did self.fetch to make a class method. Stacking methods are what they're called in every other language. Cool, onward.
Okay, and then, so now we're actually creating the cards, we're taking the information that we got from that column right there, and well, we can call it later.
What kind of method is create card? If the other one's as a static method, what would we call create card? Those are nine.
Instance.
Good, keep going.
So we're doing that by first, we're defining divs elements, or we're creating elements, excuse me, div, and then we're using the inner HTML to create what's being called using sort of keypad on this name to get the instance of its name that we use up there, and then we put each one, so the image source, we're using alt, so it's more visible when we go, so we have the name there. And then here we're defining so we're creating a UL with class name and ability right there. But then we have to actually create the thing here, so we can create a thing there. So we have a UL that we create or that we grabbed that we created up here. So we created it and grabbed it here. And then we went through the style abilities for each so that we could go through each of the ones that are listed within the API and grab them and put the arrows in them into that.
Good.
Sorry,
No,
sounding
you're-
a little
you're-
clunky here.
No, you're doing great. You are killing it. And then keep going.
Anyway, so then we're returning the div that we created up there.
Yes.
Earlier. So now that we've got that all figured out, we need to actually call on the Pokemon that we want.
Good.
Show up on the screen. So we're using that with the Pokemon that fetch, and we define the fetch method there.
And what kind of method was it?
It was a
We did a class method in Ruby.
right, static.
Static method.
There
Good.
we go. And we're taking the response we're getting from calling the Pikachu there, and parsing it. And then that one Pikachu, so then we're oh, and then we're just grabbing all those ones we set, so Pikachu name from there.
Mhm.
I wasn't sure quite what this was.
That comes back from the API.
That's just what it's called, maybe, so
Yep.
so we're just calling each one from there. Now we're actually calling the method that we made, so we made the create card method, it's being called here. And then we're just, well, first we had to, there's one, we could figure out through. That's not quite right, but, whew, that was exhausting.
Killed it. Danica.
Alright. Now can you tell us why this doesn't work outright?
What do you mean? What about this doesn't work?
Well, running.
I did. Yeah. Yep, that's exactly what I did. True story. Yeah. Oh, sorry, say that again, Ben? Yeah. That's just how the API works. Yep. So we one more cool thing we can do. So Pikachu comes back lowercase. So we could say that that's maybe its raw name. And then if I wanted like a pretty name, I can make a getter for it that returns this dot name to, let's see the title case. JS title case. Oh, is this one of these fucking things that isn't built in? Of course it is. Good gravy. I feel like there's a newer way to do that. Yeah. All right. I'm gonna do it to uppercase. What I would actually do is pull in Lodash. Yet another awesome thing that it does. Case. Start case. Or camel case or snake case. You can just run it on the strings. It's kind of nice. All right, but if I do that and then run my server again, the whole thing breaks. Too much recursion. Don't tell me what, I'll tell you when it's too much recursion. Oh, it's because raw. That's why. Because it was doing it on itself. There we go. So we can make a getter that way. It's pretty cool. Even though that getter is dynamic. All right. We're cutting into lunch. I'll do one more though. Any questions? What else? Thank you very much.